Hello, everyone, this is CRH Films, and today we have the movie The Mill. Employees of the company spend their entire days rolling a stone disc in a circle, and the worker with the fewest points is fired for good. Joe Stevens, the manager of Melort Company, wakes up in a strange triangular concrete room. There are only two things in the room, a stone mill and iron doors. Joe immediately knocks on the door, begging to be let out or at least to explain what's happening. Suddenly, he hears voices of colleagues in distress, impolitely asking Joe to be quiet. A neighbor explains that he was injected with some substance and brought here. In the coming days, Joe's life will not be easy. Joe, deciding that he is no different from Spider-Man, tries to climb out of this concrete room. However, his efforts yield no results. Through a hole in the door, Joe is given a ration of a sandwich, a couple of sandwiches, and a water bottle. Joe approaches the door, begging the guard to let him out. He mentions his pregnant wife waiting at home and being a manager, insisting that he shouldn't be here. However, the guard hits Joe's outstretched arm with a stick and walks away. The protagonist tapes up his injured arm with a tie and then starts replenishing his calories. At 10:30, an alarming signal from the Melort Company goes off. A female voice welcomes Joe to the professional training program aimed at improving his work skills. Joe asks several questions, but the projection does not answer any of them. Joe hears the neighbor's voice again, mentioning that he will be very surprised at midnight. The neighbor doesn't go into details, only saying that the laziest employee will be fired. The man also explains that no one uses names here. At midnight, Joe hears male screams and realizes what firing means. In the morning, the same neighbor explains that the company uses such methods to motivate employees to work better. The guard, bringing another portion of provisions, says that the room should be kept clean and tidy. The neighbor recommends throwing trash into a special hole in the corner of the room. Next to the hole, Joe notices hairs leading to a buried skull. The neighbor suggests that it's probably an employee who couldn't meet the quota. Before starting work, employees need to sign a stack of documents. Since no one reads them, there is a clause allowing the company to do anything they want with their employees. 5 minutes before the start of the working day, the alert system is activated. Melort explains why Joe ended up here. His productivity dropped, leading to a decrease in the department's efficiency, then the branch, and ultimately affecting the entire company's performance. On his first working day, Joe needs to score 50 points, and failure to meet the quota will result in punishment. 1 point is awarded for each rotation of the stone disc. At midnight, the least efficient employee is fired. Rolling up his sleeves, Joe begins his work. The man spends the whole day turning the mill, and the projection continuously shows ads about how great Melort is. At 10 in the evening, the workday comes to an end. Joe has scored a whopping 100 points. The man desperately tries to shield himself from the screams of a woman being fired. In the morning, Joe talks to the neighbor again. They discuss the punishment and firing system for unproductive employees. The neighbor recommends not telling anyone about the number of points scored because unfortunate comrades will need to score one more to survive. During the conversation, Joe talks about his pregnant wife, expecting their first child. Just before the start of the workday, the neighbor advises not to try too hard, as, apart from raising the quota and oral greetings, nothing else can be expected from the company. After the conversation, Joe starts working. The man recalls choosing a new house with his wife. Lost in his thoughts, Joe doesn't notice how the workday passes. This time, he scores a whopping 150 points, but besides meager praise, he receives nothing else. Later, the guard orders Joe to take off all his clothes and approach the doors. Frightened that he scored the fewest points, Joe obeys, as there is nowhere to hide or escape. However, behind the doors, there is not punishment but a hose with water and soap, something needed after exhausting work. In the morning, Joe and the neighbor discuss the significance of this experiment. The neighbor says he doesn't understand the sense of their work at all. They engage in absurd work, as they neither produce anything nor contribute any benefit to the world through their work. Midday comes, and Joe runs out of water, requesting supplements. But the neighbor explains that the company allocates only the necessary amount for survival, not for comfortable existence. The neighbor suggests filtering urine through the mat in the corner of the room, where the camera has no view. Although the man is thirsty, he is not ready for such measures yet. During work, the protagonist again recalls his pregnant wife. She wanted to work against the doctor's advice, understanding that Joe wouldn't be able to pay all the bills himself. However, he opposes, saying he will be promoted soon. The wife counters this argument by saying that Joe has been promised a promotion for years. Immersed in memories, the main character doesn't notice how the workday passes, scoring a whopping 370 points. After the notification of the end of the workday, Joe collapses to the ground, exhausted. He notices handles at the bottom with the scratched name Alex. The neighbor explains that Alex is like a local legend, the only one who managed to leave this place alive. Joe is shocked as to why they haven't closed this place. Didn't Alex report to the relevant authorities about the terrible things happening here? In the morning, Joe is brought a case with a personalized pen as a thank you for high achievements at work. However, such a gift does not please the man, prompting him to throw a few angry words at the company. Immediately after this, the daily quota increases from 50 to 370. After expressing his dissatisfaction once again, Joe resumes his work. However, after making one rotation, the point is not credited. The neighbor explains that Joe is being punished. Now, to earn 1 point, he needs to make 2 rotations. The man works with all his might, but by the evening, he realizes that he won't be able to meet the quota. He shares his situation with the neighbor. The unfortunate comrade yells at Joe, as he warned not to strain too much, setting dubious records. His diligence can affect everyone. The company may raise the daily quota. After the end of the workday, the company accuses Joe of not meeting the quota, thus framing his colleagues. In an attempt to somehow boost Joe's motivation and efficiency, Melort suggests bringing his wife, Kate, here. Terrified, he assures that he will meet the quota as long as the company doesn't touch his pregnant wife. The projection gives Joe a second chance. The next morning and throughout the day, the ceiling glows with an annoying red color, reminding Joe that he needs to work off yesterday's punishment. Wrapping the handle with his jacket, Joe starts working. After a few hours, he begins to hallucinate. He sees himself only in a suit. The vision laughs at his difficult and hopeless situation, claiming that Joe is just a cog in a big system that can be replaced at any moment without remorse. The vision suggests giving up, but Joe, remembering his pregnant wife, takes on the work with double strength. In the last seconds of the workday, he manages to score the required number of points. The projection praises the man and cancels the punishment. At night, as a reward for good work, Joe is shown a video of his wife, who has already given birth. In the early morning, Joe tries to inquire more about Alex. The neighbor recommends examining the wall and the blind spot of the camera. On the wall, he notices a crack. Using the pen previously given as a gift, Joe tries to chip away at the hole in the wall. However, this activity is not as quick, as the senseless rolling of the mill in a circle has not been cancelled. After a few days, Joe finally manages to make a hole in the wall leading to a ventilation shaft. Talking to the neighbor, Joe crawls in there. At the exit, total darkness awaits him. When he stumbles upon the handle of the mill, he realizes that he didn't escape but only crawled into the neighboring room. A flash of light blinds him for a moment, followed by a blow to the head from the guard. Joe comes to his senses in his room, and the hole in the wall is sealed. As a punishment, Melort raises the daily quota to 1,000 points for everyone. Due to the selfishness of an individual worker, everyone will suffer. Additionally, the security breaks the leg of Joe's neighbor, so the man can't even stand. The neighbor admits that he is somewhat guilty of what is happening here. When he worked as a programmer in the company, he developed an artificial intelligence that aimed for constant improvement in employee efficiency. Over time, the AI began demanding the unreal for maximum benefit. Joe suggests tricking the computer. If all the employees do nothing, even the laziest worker of the day won't be able to be identified. They shout to convey their idea to others. Everyone agrees unanimously. Throughout the day, the workers lie down, eat, and continuously listen to Melort's advertisements. But a few minutes before the end of the workday, artificial intelligence informs them that it is protected from fools. Those with 0 points at midnight will be sent to the job market. Irritated by this news, the workers get back to work. The neighbor convinces Joe to use his brain and score at least 1 point. However, due to the fracture, he can't even stand up. With tears in his eyes, Joe rolls the wheel around its axis. A conversation ensues among the men close to midnight. The neighbor reveals he is the same Alex who failed to escape but believed Joe would have better luck. At midnight, security enters the neighbor's room. Joe even covers his ears with his hands not to hear the gruesome screams. In the morning, Melort states that Joe should strive for perfection rather than rebel without cause. As motivation, they show him a video of his wife with their child, who is already learning to walk. Joe can't believe so much time has passed, and this triggers a fit of rage. He kicks the wheel, ignoring Melort's warnings. Due to damaging company property, they inform him that his services are no longer needed. 12 company workers enter the room and stand along the wall without saying anything. Joe tries to find out what's happening, but the workers remain silent. Later, a security guard enters the room. Putting on gloves and filling a syringe with some substances, he admits to enjoying his job, especially firing workers. Perhaps he'll get a promotion, and then he can move to Joe's new home, where a single mother lives. Mention of his wife and son fills Joe with hatred. He attacks the security guard, turning his face into a bloody mess. Meanwhile, Melort announces that the security guard failed in his duties. The projection suggests Joe conduct the layoffs in exchange for canceling his own punishment and a work promotion. However, at that moment, Joe stops. He sees the security guard's bloodied face and realizes he has gone too far. The protagonist stands up and shouts that he won't submit to some artificial intelligence. The scene changes. Joe sits in the office in a neat suit with sensors connected to his head. He doesn't immediately understand what's happening. His mentor approaches him, a man with the same face as the security guard. He says that Joe excelled in the training program and deserves a promotion. All of it was a computer simulation, and, in addition, only 1 hour has passed, not several months. The mentor praises Joe for outstanding results and leads him to a new office. On the way, he continually praises the company, stating that Melort is perfection itself. In the new office, the mentor hands Joe documents to sign about not disclosing details of professional training. Joe leaves, and with tears in his eyes, he calls his wife. He sends greetings to his unborn son and promises to destroy the company. The film ends here.